Good. Welcome. First, I'm going to ask the people all the way in the back to come forward. And let's try to fill up these seats here. Because if we come closer together, then we can also interact better. And then I have a second request for you. I need at least 8 people here. 8 volunteers. 8 people who would like to have some fun. Okay, and we make 2 rows, 2 lines. 4 people are standing here, and 4 people are standing here, so facing each other.
So come, let's play.
Exactly. Okay, and a face like this. Okay. One more. Good. Now you take your right hand, all of you from this side, right hand, and your left hand, and hold the hands. No. Yes, correct. Okay. Now you take his hand. Okay? Without anybody letting go of the hands. Through whole exercise, you're not supposed to let go of your hand. Never, ever. Okay? So you take his hand. Yeah, you have to take closer. Good. Now, everybody takes somebody else's hand. As long as you as long as you hold 2 people. So you, whoa, you messed up completely. Okay, good. As long as, well, you have to be on the other side, not on your side. It has to be on the other side. Yeah. But 2 people, okay? Good. Everybody holding 2 people on the opposite side. Good. You feel comfortable? Good. Okay. Now I need somebody. I need an expensive consultant. Any consultants here? IT consultants? There must be IT consultants here. Can I help? Can I help? Sorry. I'm a student. Student? Good. Maybe you can, as a student, then easier solve this problem. Because usually in this exercise, no matter how expensive IT consultant is, he was not capable to solve it, ever. Okay? So what I would like to have is one perfect circle. This is the goal. One perfect circle without them letting go of the hand. And you have to explain to me how you're going to do it.
I have to make them circle.
Yes, they have to be one circle. No, what I mean really perfect like this. Yeah, not this messed up circle. You sound like I have a legacy, and you say, but it's already good. But it's kind of messed up. Yeah. Oh, you want to be even more expensive? Okay. So it's going to cost me money, extra. No, whoa. You're not supposed to do anything. I want to have a plan, and I want to approve, which I'm going to approve first. I'm the responsible manager here, and I need to approve it. And once it's approved, which says step by step. The first step is going to be this, and the second step, and so on, and as many steps as you have. And then we have a perfect circle in the end. That's what I need.
You should not change the connections also.
No. No, you can't just hack stuff around. Of course, I have to have a plan which says perfectly what I'm supposed to do. How much time do you need? It's not going to work, right? Okay, thank you. It cost me some money. but it's damn difficult to solve. You don't see it, right? Okay. Team, please make a circle without letting go of your hands. Yeah?
One circle or two circles?
Keep moving further. Just keep moving. Not possible? So you have two circles which are entangled.
Yes.
You're pretty sure?
Yeah. Two circles.
Start to try, keep moving a bit more. Jumping around, everything. Just move. Move. Keep moving. You have two circles now? Okay. Then it's then you can't. You have the best possible what you could achieve. So what I see right now clearly, do you also see? It's two circles which are entangled. Okay? So this is the best possible you could achieve. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. So what have we noticed in this exercise? Anybody idea? Microphone. Hello? Does it work? I'm not sure.
We should have known the requirement of.
No. Yeah.
We should have known the requirement of joining the circle before joining the hands.
You should know the requirement. Yeah.
We cross the hands, right? So
Yeah.
when we are opposite and we cross the hands,
Yes.
we do not know like we have to form a circle.
Yes. Yeah, I put you in a messed up situation, in a typical legacy situation. Yes. And but I did explain what's supposed to be done, right? So it's clear what the goal is. So you all knew actually as a group what the goal is.
We have.
No, correct. Yeah. Yes, correct. Requirements came later, he said. Yeah. So shit happens. So, like in a normal situation also. Okay. What else?
They have a lead and they don't know how to collaborate. They're not able to make a decision. When they have somebody to lead,
Mm-hmm.
they are not able to make any decision how to make a circle.
Okay. Can you say it again? Sorry.
When you have a lead, like when you ask two of the students to ask them to make a decision how to make a circle,
Yes.
where they are not able to, they were waiting for him for his decision.
Yeah.
But when you took them out and you asked the team to make a decision,
Yeah.
they were able to collaborate and discuss among themselves to form a circle.
Yes. Correct. Don't turn it off. So there you go.
Yeah, in the team, total people are totally coupled very closely
Yes.
when initially, and that is for the temporary part. Okay, but when we try to expand to a bigger circle,
Yeah.
then it is not scaling up. So
Yeah.
I think these entangles are causing some hurdles for making a proper circle.
Okay. Thank you. So one thing I can assure you of, we did this exercise not with 8 people, but actually also with 40 people or 60 people. And it's still possible to make a circle. And of course, in many cases, actually, usually it becomes one circle. So can you imagine? You don't see this happening with 60 people. It's completely messed up. It looks really ridiculous. A lot of laughing, of course. And but at the end, they were able actually with 60 people still make a circle. So it does scale. One thing I hope you also noticed is the fact that that who was actually in the lead when you started to make a circle? Was there any leader? No, there was no leader. Actually, everybody took a lead. Why they took a lead? Because they knew actually what the ultimate goal is. We need to make a circle. And we have a pain. We depend on each other. There is a strict constraint. And you keep moving. You keep collaborating. You keep feeling this pain. You keep dealing with the pain. And did you see the solution while we were doing this? No, you haven't. So when you're dealing with these kind of situations, you don't actually see how things gonna meet. What's the next step? What's the step after that? What's the 10th step? And so on. You don't know. You just make sure that you have proper constraints, and then you improve and improve, and you move. We keep moving and trying out, experimenting until you make a circle. Okay? And the last and the most important thing is that people inside, people in the teams, self-managing teams, are actually the people who are capable of solving this biggest problems. This is such a crucial aspect. And this is the link actually to what I'm going to explain to you. And this is also the main message of my talk and of this actually half a day. This whole power of having self-managing teams, even in a scale situation, and making sure that you actually even solve the biggest problem that you can imagine. Okay? I'm going to explain you how it works in the real life, and I'm going to explain you how LeSS contributes to that. If you, by the way, have any questions, you can, if you have a really kind of questions, I don't understand this, and you can ask, but preferably you can either put it on the papers that you have, or we have in the back, as I understood, we have in the back also the flip charts and multiple places, so you can just put questions there, and then we can deal with that later on. I'm going to spend some time to in the first part to actually give you a story first. Okay. So I'm Viktor Grgic, by the way, and I've been invited by Satisha and Naveen to come here, and thank you very much. And I don't know where they are, and outside, I guess, and to talk about this, and to talk about LeSS mainly, and also to explain it from a real life story. So what I've been doing in the past almost 20 years in IT is I felt very much like Wall-E. Anybody seen the movie Wall-E? Oh, quite good. Okay, so if you remember the movie, so there is this robot thing which goes to the garbage, and he spends years, decades and decades to move pile around. So it doesn't really clean up anything, it just moves it from one place to another. It kind of stacks it, and it looks, wow, I created something, and I've cleaned up some other mess. Okay, and that's how I felt the first many years actually, while being called the architect or being called a consultant and a developer. So you try to improve things, but when you look carefully what you're actually doing, it doesn't really look that much of an improvement, especially as an architect. We architects, and I used to be very much called architect, have a tendency to have this major breakthrough idea, and that's going to actually solve all the problems of the company. And when you look back what you actually created, it's even bigger mess. And so it's another layer of abstraction, another thing added, but the old one hasn't been cleaned up yet, and so on and so on. So in those years, I was quite frustrated, and I realized one thing is I like very much this statement. This is one of the principles of 12 principles behind Agile Manifesto. And I put it there because I've noticed way too often that people actually don't, maybe they knew these principles, but they actually don't really kind of put it in their head. And you see that when people talk about Agile stuff, and you look carefully what they're doing, and you just have to mention the principle, and you discover actually they're not following the thing that we actually want to achieve. So this one in particular I like. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. It kind of connects what I do right now and what I have been doing for the past years. So dealing a lot with architecture design, and now combining that in a self-managing team, so what it means. Okay. Another two principles. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. And the second one, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. So, must work together daily throughout the project. The business people, we really mean all the way to the customer and clients and so on, as close as possible, nothing in between. What I value most is at the end of the day, you want to see some really true results, and you want to actually, what you achieve, that it's actually real results. What do I mean by that? I mean things like truly delivering increments iteratively into production preferably, and bringing it to the customer. And then truly embracing the change. Whenever the customer changes his mind and then the business changes their mind, fine, let's embrace that, and let's do it as in shortest cycles possible. Evidence-based information. So when you talk about scaling, and especially in a LeSS, where we talk about much more than a word scaling, then you have to have this evidence-based information. You cannot just kind of theorize about all kinds of stuff, go into an organization and start changing stuff without actually knowing what you are doing, and without having any evidence that it's going to work, and it has worked before. Okay? So it's extremely important to have this evidence-based information to know what you're doing. So let me tell you a story, a port of Rotterdam. So I learned just this morning from Naveen that Chennai is also a big port, and which is kind of similar if you compare to Netherlands. Netherlands, of course, tiny country compared to India, but the single biggest thing and engine of Netherlands is actually the port of Rotterdam. It's kind of an embodiment of the history of Netherlands, how it became what it is today. And still today, it's one of the biggest economic engines nowadays, especially because of China and all the goods coming in and out. So they have two goals. They have an existing system. It's really large. So they have two goals in the system. The first one is we have to replace it because we are not capable of putting new requirements in because the technology is way too old. So they have to replace it. The second one, the Port of Rotterdam is expanding. So because of all those goods coming mainly for China, they wanted to expand and take over even more piece of a sea and make a land of it and put their terminals and so on. But one thing they didn't want to do is be less efficient in the process. So have more people, more processes, more stuff. They want to actually simplify. You could say descale. And embrace more traffic without having more people and more organization onto it. Okay, so they started to the project to replace this old system. So you can imagine it's large and a lot of money is involved because if you do it well, you can save lots of money. It's really talking about millions and billions of euros. And so what they did is they have this idea in their mind that because it's so big and it's so important, we have to also, it's also complex. So if something is important and it can save us lots of money, then we can, it must be complex because it involves all kinds of things. So what I started to introduce all kinds of architectural things, Q&A department, all kinds of roles and people, rational unified process, business process engine, business process server, all kinds of technology stuff and architectural stuff and organizational stuff put in place. teams of people working with the different components, and all in one big process where they start the first analyzing and producing all kinds of documents. You can imagine. So what happened is this. So they have one use case which hasn't even been finished in 6 months. And for me this is, and for them also, was a disaster. But I have met quite a few people, I don't know how is your case, who actually don't feel this is a disaster. They're much bigger disasters. So spending a whole year doing something without having actual results. From the moment that you start the project, and 1 year later, there is still nothing actually. It's just ridiculous. And ended up in a big pile of documents, and one proof of concept, which actually hasn't, it's a proof of concept, so it shouldn't go in production even. But they still pushed for it, kind of, this is the thing that still needs to be finished. So, just one use case, you can't use it. It's just piece of a feature that they delivered in 6 months. So there's this assumption in advance, customer knows what he wants, developer knows how to build it, and nothing will change. This assumption was very strong at that point in time. Luckily, the customer is a typical Dutch culture where the customer, and specifically Rotterdam, they don't like BS. So they say, when you start to kind of talk about all kinds of, we need the documents, we need stuff, and so on, they start, you haven't produced anything in 6 months, and you already spent so much money, I don't understand. So it's just common sense. So now getting back to the organizations. And there is some typical thing about large organizations versus small organizations. If you go to a startup or a small organization in general, this is less likely to happen. Because the problem, what you face, you are kind of thinking yourself, this is nuts. I'm spending so much money and not really getting anything out. I'm not going to do it, especially if it's my money, because small organization and customer sees this, and it's going to stop much early. In the larger the organization, the more nuts it becomes. So the people don't see anymore the problem. So the problem is felt on a local level, not on a global level. So what happens, and when you feel a problem on a local level, you have all kinds of painkillers. So introduce methodologies, introduce all kinds of measures, consultants, and so on. And they're going to produce all kinds of documents, and they're going to solve this problem for you. Well, it doesn't happen. So they're really good in these painkillers. And what we started to do there is to actually first introduce these painkillers, to expose the pain. So you could say the Scrum and LeSS and Agile stuff, what we're doing, is actually a painkiller removal system. You could see it like that, in organizational level. So the first thing we did, and now we're getting into the bits of how we did it, is we reorganized. So what they had is these typical groups of people or departments doing a specific thing. And what usually happens with Agile teams, and that's what happened actually also in their case just before I came, and is that we're going to do Agile stuff. And Scrum, and we want to switch. And yeah, combined with rational unified process because it's a complex thing, so we need to combine these things. The Scrum stuff is for the teams, and on organizational level, wow, this doesn't work. It's a childish play. On an organizational level, we need something else. So what I see in most organizations, and I don't know about you, would love to hear, is that when they say we're doing Scrum, they talk about these 3 disciplines usually. There's development, analysis a bit, and testing. And they introduce all kinds of practices, which are all good, they're great. But this is not Scrum. You get about 10-50% of advantage of what you actually could achieve. I'm not going for 10-15%. We shouldn't be never doing it for 10-15% because we're not really improving much. We should be doing for a 600-700%. We have a much faster delivery, much better quality with the much more fun and much more efficient everything. And in order to achieve that, you have to embrace all these disciplines in one team, one cross-functional, self-managing team, which actually is capable of doing everything. From the moment it talks to the user to the moment they deliver in production, everything. So also in production. Okay, so what we did is we restructured in a DevOps teams gradually. First, there was a production team, separate team, which actually dealt with operations separately. And later on, this operations team is also actually merged into the feature teams, where I'm going to explain what a feature team and so on. But they embarked in a feature teams, which effectively became DevOps team. So for me, DevOps team means is a team which actually does everything from the moment that they talk to user to bringing to production. That's what DevOps actually mean. Then you get the true advantages. I don't say you should always do it, but if you can do it, it's incredible advantage. You have a huge capability to really improve stuff. So what we did is, instead of having for a scale, it just means that each of the teams is capable of doing everything. From the moment the user asks something to deliver it, they're capable actually to deliver it completely, each of the teams. So if you want to scale, you scale it horizontally always. And that's what we did in this case. So we have, in the beginning, there were 3 feature teams. Later on, there were 4 feature teams. And this is a situation as it used to be in the first few years. We still have project management. We have a product owner, and they had a second one product owner, but it wasn't really a product owner. It was more helping this one. Afterwards, I would rather see that they only had one product owner. They have a number of domain experts, analysts who are helping things out, but don't have decision power. We have an infrastructure specialist, which helps the teams to actually deal with the infrastructure and knowledge and stuff, because he was very knowledgeable in that. He's what we call traveler. So he's participating in each of the teams depending on a need, and helps the team to actually deliver into the production with his infrastructure knowledge. And so each team has all the disciplines and required to actually deliver things. So each team in the beginning had a Scrum Master. In reality, they were, in the beginning, they were Scrum Master in a sense. They actually facilitated the meetings, and they facilitated all kinds of stuff. But later on, you can't really call them Scrum Master anymore, because the Scrum Master, the role of Scrum Master, is to actually be the change agent in organization. And what they were more like a hands-on also team member, and who partially did the Scrum Master job, who kind of organized the meetings and that kind of stuff. So essentially, if I look afterwards, if I look back what I did, I wasn't really an Agile coach. I was actually more of Scrum Master. Because the Scrum Master Agile coach is kind of one and the same thing, almost. There is not much difference there. So what we did is, in the creation of those teams, we had a session of about 2 hours. So we reorganized. We implemented your organizational change for these people in 2 hours. Okay? If you have a consultant who says, I need months to actually implement organizational change, because we have to be careful about all kinds of stuff, and things could go wrong, and we cannot just shuffle people around and make teams and cross-functional teams. This is difficult and it's complicated. No, it's not. Just not. There are so many cases which, like this one, which you do it in 2 hours. Okay? Craig Larman and Bas Potter is going to explain you so many cases where we just do it so fast. So my advice is, in these cases, if you think, how am I going to create these cross-functional teams? Well, this is one way, self-design session, where you put all the people in a room like this. By the way, it's a really great room, huge. We don't have this kind of stuff in Hong Kong, by the way. So you put them there, and you have a facilitated session where they define the disciplines each cross-functional team should have, and in a certain way they actually organize themselves in a cross-functional teams. They spread around, and they talk to each other. So they design the teams themselves. There is no manager who actually tells them how to organize. Okay. Oh. One question everybody has, so what's the role of the managers in this case? Well, that changes gradually. So it changed in their case, gradually from being this coordinator and manager who gets to decide all kinds of stuff, especially project managers, and even architects. There used to be 7 architects, and they were actually fired more or less. and they the manager, project manager, still stayed. But what happened actually in time is they switched from being typically manager to actually being an enabler and helper of the teams who actually coordinate themselves. So any coordination needed between the teams should be actually dealt directly. And that's another thing, just like how do I create feature teams, how do I coordinate between the teams, how do they actually coordinate between each other, you just let people talk to each other. The 90% of the problem of coordination is actually the people who actually coordinate. Remove the people, suddenly there is no problem. It's interesting to see. So just let people talk to each other. They're going to solve the problem. It's really interesting to observe. And it works really, really well. It works on all kinds of aspects, like everything they actually enable to decide, and that's the obvious solution then, enable people to decide themselves. They can actually, they do decide themselves. Like all architectural questions, like how we're gonna do releases, and dependencies between user stories, dependencies between teams. Let people just talk to each other. Somebody gonna shout out, hey, we have a dependency with that team. Shall we go together in a room and just talk to each other and we can resolve? That's what they do. Okay, so Scrum is fully introduced. So all the Scrum practices, so I'm not going to talk about that. And this sense of continuous improvement. This is one of the most challenging things that I've seen in coaching, is that the teams have this deep down entrenched idea of wanting and stability, so and especially management. They have this change thing, which is scary, and so we need to get as fast as possible to a stable situation. And unrooting this idea that you need to get to the stable situation is quite difficult, because people love this stability. It gives them a certain sense of security or something. And instead, everything should be in a constant state of flux all the time in order to improve. The biggest challenge are the titles. So I spent really a lot of time talking to people about their titles. And even now today, where I coach, pretty much every customer, this is the biggest challenge that I've seen. And very often overlooked by when you bring agile stuff, and very often the reason not to do it properly, by the way. And the only point is we don't really talk about it. Instead, we say, yeah, but you have all these managers, you have all these architects. Why don't we make a use of it? For me, that doesn't make any sense. That's a really wrong statement to say. I mean, what just doesn't compile. And all that compiles is the end result. Are you capable as a whole team together to work such closely in such a tremendous efficient way, just like in the circle example, to truly deliver the results? So I spend a lot of time talking to each individual and getting to find out if they're willing to change and they're willing to embrace this idea of self-managing team, where the team and all team members are equally important and they equally have contribution to the result. So what they achieved is in every 2 weeks, they deliver software in production. They improve architecture all the time. They actually had an external audit which checked the architecture, checked the quality of the code, and they found out that they ended up in the top 5% worldwide of thousands and thousands of systems. They checked on quality, how high quality is. And the amazing thing about the quality, what they explained to me, is every time on the same curve, which curve in the beginning, quality is very high in the beginning, because everybody is willing to do it properly and so on, and they start to build stuff properly and so on. And then the pressure starts to kick in. And the second thing starts to kick in, the system starts to grow. So the size of the system has a tremendous influence on quality. So you have to keep, no matter how good in the beginning your design patterns or architecture principles are, the things just become messier and messier. So what happens all the time, the larger the system, the quality goes down. At the end, large systems typically are, by definition, legacy, so damn difficult to improve or do something about it in the long term. What happened in this case, the quality actually didn't drop. So they stay high all the time, and which is amazing. And why it happened? It happened because the teams had a really deep sense of quality. They had this perfect idea, just like you could say, like a circle. We are building here 24/7 system, which is used in harbor to follow ships. So the captains rely on this system when you call them and say, around the corner there is another ship you cannot see on a radar, but we have information to tell you about it. You need to slow down. Imagine that system goes down. Okay, so it would be a news in the Netherlands, and probably heard it even here about a disaster between two ships, and because the system was down. Just unacceptable. So the quality level has to be incredibly high. The system just cannot go down for a long period of time. We do have backups. We do have fallback procedures, but they are not good enough after 2 hours. So you can kind of survive 2 hours, but more than that, not. So the constraint that we put ourselves, and the team to put ourselves, is that no matter how often you deliver, every 2 weeks, even then you cannot actually go down with the system. So when they deliver the new version, the complete system, it's actually, it stays up. So they have a way to actually deploy in such a way. And it's not some fancy tool, it's just common sense. You can use the really simple stuff to achieve that. It's just common practices that you Google about. You just need to think simple way. Don't think in some kind of expensive scaling situation, solution. Okay, so to be clear, 24/7 business critical system, all system tested in 50 minutes, 4 years long, almost every 2 weeks, new version in production for highly self-organizing teams in top 5% quality worldwide. Okay, how do they achieve this? One thing I've learned, especially from this case, and kind of explained in exercise also, you have to have a clear goal. And you have to have a sense when you're actually kind of stuck here together, yes, I want to achieve this goal. And every single team member has to have this feeling. So this is one of the big problems in organizations, that the team members do not recognize themselves in the problem that needs to be achieved, in the solution that needs to be achieved, the goal. So they see the problem, but they kind of have no idea actually where we're heading and what it exactly means. And they start complaining about, oh, this is going to be shitty anyway, so I don't care that much. I'm just going to go along and do whatever I've been told. Okay. The second one is the trust. And that's where the LeSS comes in place very much and it builds upon, is that if you say, what I've seen often is that when people say it's so damn difficult to, I don't see that large-scale Scrum or LeSS being implemented, or Scrum even actually, basic Scrum, and because we have all these roles and people, we don't know what to do with it, and the managers, they get to decide and so on. And the trust seems to be one of the biggest ingredients there. So how much trust is there from the management to the team? And the last, but definitely not forget about that one, is where the energy comes from. Having fun together makes it actually work really well. Because no matter how much we think we're going to our job because of the money, the reality is actually that we go because of emotional reasons, and that you have fun and that you have a certain sense of fulfillment. Of course, you need enough money to have a pleasant life. Team makes almost all decisions. We have all kinds of workshops, fun stuff we did together, and so on. Ski trips, and they all pay themselves, by the way. So it's interesting how much they expect from the company or whatsoever. There are two guys who actually, usually there is a lot of turnover in the people. So somebody stays on a project for some time and then kind of bored or whatever, and they go hops to another project because it's good for a career. In this case, practically everybody except the architects that were fired in the beginning stayed in a project for 4 years. And the most amazing are two people who actually were traveling from all the way from north to the south of Netherlands. It's about 200 kilometers. They're traveling and staying in a hotel 2 days just to be in this amazing project and to work with these amazing people in such an amazing environment. Okay? Quality architecture already explained a lot. How does it work? Some statement, just in time, just enough. You probably heard a lot about it. Open space sessions, we used quite a lot of those in order to discuss things together, to involve everybody in decision making. Knowledge sharing, obvious pair programming is kind of the XP practice in general. They're all pretty much applied there. Wiki is used to actually harvest the knowledge, which means nothing is really put in a wiki. It's always after you actually gain the knowledge. Standardization is always discovered and not predefined. It doesn't make sense to actually predefine standardization. Actually, I love this statement from Taiichi Ono in Workplace Management, where he actually goes to Taiichi Ono is the father of Toyota production system, and he was the one who actually brought all this amazing idea which made Toyota so great. Is when he goes to one factory and he sees what's happening, and it's, for example, they don't have any standards. So what he gives to them is, together with them or himself, he gives the standard, but he purposely put a suboptimal standard. So he purposely put just enough standard, which is obviously not good enough. I mean, we're talking about building cars standard. So, and in order to encourage the team to actually start continuously improving. So he emphasizes much more this continuous improvement, where the standard is nothing more than a state in which the Kaizen happens. So you say, we do Kaizen, we set a standard, and then we keep doing Kaizen and change the standard to a new one, and that's the way how Kaizen works. So we had all this also product vision workshops where everybody was there. To give you one story, what happened is the harbor master is the highest authority in the harbor. So he says, I want to have I have two goals. One goal is actually to replace the old system. The second goal is expansion of the harbor. So there is one clever nerd among all those guys, and he said, which one do you prefer? Which of those two goals? And so the harbor master said, I want both. This is what I want. And the developer says, no, you don't understand me. You have to choose, because I tell you so, because I'm doing my job. And when I'm doing my job and collaborating with product and everybody else, I have to know what is more important. Because if you don't know what's more important, it's going to be damn difficult to prioritize. It's going to be damn difficult to actually discuss things. So we have to know which one is actually more important. So the discussion with the harbor master, back and forth, in a room like this, with just as many people, between this developer and several other people and harbor master, eventually he had to comply and say, yes, I want to replace the old system first, and the secondary, I want to actually to fulfill the expansion of the harbor. Can you imagine? So this kind of collaboration between actually the ultimate customer, who really ultimately pays for everything and decides everything, with the developer who needs to build it. This is what we require. There is no translation between customer and the developer mindset. So 4 years later, from a 6 month delivery time to every 2 weeks, documents-based collaboration, no dedicated based on the operations team and the development team and this kind of stuff, and to no dedicated operations team. There used to be dedicated, so on average 5 developers fixing issue full time when you have when you deal with all kinds of problems. So one thing I found very interesting in organizations to actually have a ratio between how much percentage of time you're spending improving something, so building new features, to percentage of time you do actually fixing stuff, which is what we call running the company or running the bank currently. So improving versus running, so this ratio. So what you see here is also this ratio tremendously moving to improving versus running. So they spend less and less time on the running stuff because this should be automated, and they spend their time actually improving stuff, and this is the true, actually, business value, and the value, the true productivity value. Okay? And the main message, obviously, is really that all these people together working and collaborating together to make sure that things happen. So we can go to the questions before I go to LeSS. Maybe that's a good idea, because I've been talking too much. So idea is, okay, you probably have a lot of questions. You know what we're going to do is each table, please discuss with each other the question you would like to actually ask. And so discuss first with each other the questions that you have, and each table is going to choose one question. Good? And if there are too few people on a table, you can move to another table forward.
Is that you have kept marketing also as one of the ingredient in the whole team,
Yeah.
along with other disciplines.
Yeah.
But generally, how this is possible, because the goals of marketing are different and the goals of team who actually work are different. The mindsets are totally different. So how is it possible to bring everyone in one place?
Yes. In this case, the marketing is not that much of typical marketing, what you usually see. So I can understand your question, and I can imagine that in most cases, it's probably not advisable to put marketing part of this team. But I would advise in the companies which are extremely kind of market driven. So they have to go outside and they have to promote new features and they have to continuously deliver. You can imagine that you actually want marketing to have the same mindset as a team. They have to collaborate together. How are we gonna present this feature to the outside? So it depends very often on the situation. But if it's something very market driven, where you really have a lot of marketing work also to be done, then you might want to put them also in the team, in cross-functional. So shall spend about 5 minutes talking to each other, and then we start with the questions. Okay? I'd like to start.
Hello.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Kalyan. I saw a slide which talks about just removing the different types of hierarchies in the organization and going in for a flat structure. Mm-hmm. Correct. So see, out of my experience, and in fact, all of us in the table agreed to this point. So whenever we go in for any type of transformation from waterfall to agile, mm-hmm. So we end up meeting the C-level people, the chief, CEO, CEOs and all. Okay. So the only question is, in agile, they don't have clarity with respect to planning and other stuff and all.
They don't have
clarity.
Yeah.
Of you don't have. We do something called as progressive elaboration over there, right? Yeah. We don't do upfront planning and all. So they're just asking, with the small set of performers, how do you achieve this goal? You're getting it. It's like, yeah. It's like you were just talking about eliminating the different hierarchies in the organization.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. So I face it as a big challenge in terms of convincing them. Yeah. You see, if I don't have a lean visionary sitting at the top, right, he'll not be able to appreciate and understand my points. Correct. So I just want to understand as to how did you approach and how did you solve this type of crisis? Okay. So to rephrase the question, to be pretty sure, so when you start introducing this kind of changes, you have to have a backing from a top management, otherwise... Absolutely. No, if we have a backing, it's going to be a smooth sail. If not, how do we go about it? If you don't have a backing, how do you go about it? Yes. Okay. Okay, so from this situation, the perfect situation for Agile coach is actually when there is a big mess already. So, and this kind of what happened here. They spent lots of time and nothing was produced, which makes a kind of job for me easy in this case. In other cases, it's not like that. So it's usually, in my case, when I go to an organization and being asked to bring this Agile thing, Scrum thing, by far the most cases, they actually don't know what they're asking. So they even have a backing. They say, we'd like this Agile stuff. And then you start talking to them, are you sure? And then you realize, whoa, wait a minute. And they start to kind of usually
compromise, which is awful. You don't get any benefit, but you have something which you call agile. And so what you do in such a case is that you actually working in the beginning on awareness first. So something similar like this session. You talk about it, you talk to each other, and you talk as deep as possible to the actual need they have. Not the want, but the need. So you have to tap on the need. And which basically means that you start not talking about methodologies and changes and stuff, but what do you ultimately would wish to achieve? And very often these people, when they start talking about, hire you for just one team or something, they already, even management, they already have this idea they heard from other companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, and they heard about it, and so they want the same. Yeah, they just don't understand what they exactly want, but what they see it's cool, they want it also. And they see their big organization is not moving really fast, so they want to make it faster. It's basically what they see. And so you tap into this need, original need, and start talking about it and see if they really want to achieve this and how much they're willing to actually go for it. And that's one perception, one thing. The another thing is that you, at the same time, you want to actually show something first. Because if I'm a CEO or in a high position, somebody C-level, and anybody comes to me, whether it's internal or external, no matter how great your label is, you're going to be skeptical. So what exactly does it mean? Please show me first. And which actually fits perfectly into experimentation idea, which means that you take one project and you try things out. You change things and show what's possible. And this is one of the most effective ways to actually get the conversation start going on a higher level. So you want to first show the results, and you use these results to actually sell the greater idea. So you say you achieved a bit, like what I explained, that you have a testing, development, analysis, and you have this agile team, and it's working really nice, so they see this, and then you start talking about impediments. And there are lots of impediments, because they're still not capable to deliver really fast in production. They're still waiting a lot for requirements, and so on and so on. And so you start actually exposing these problems, and they can actually work on it. And when the management sees the problems concretely, then they're much more willing to accept.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next one. There. Okay.
So from what I understood is like you had 4 self-organizing teams, and the teams used to take care of the design, the development as well. Everything used to happen in one place, in the same sprint, I guess, right?
Yes.
So in that sort of a scenario, like for example, if there is the project starts and we have an epic which is kind of like a login logout epic, which is assigned to one of the 4 Scrum teams. Then there is a registration epic which is assigned to maybe the other team. Okay, so the login logout epics needs to be in place for this registration epic to for this team to help to proceed on that. So in this sort of a situation, what happens typically is like most of the stories which the registration team is facing, they put it in the backlog saying that we don't have much of the information because this other team needs to complete their story for us to proceed. So there is a lot of dependency among these epics in such a scenario. But we are forced to when you're presented with these epics in a sprint planning, we have 4 Scrum teams which are planned. So obviously one team has to take one module, the other team has to take another module, and simultaneously go ahead with the development. But this sort of dependency is created, and also the other team is not in a situation to give the KT to the other team because they are running in a fast track mode, and they don't they don't have the time to prepare a KT for the the other Scrum team, which is has a dependency.
Okay. A few questions. How many teams you're talking about in this situation?
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So each team has a kind of a specialty on a functional basis.
functionality wise they have.
So they are, from technical perspective, cross-functional in the sense that they have all the disciplines, but they are very much focused on one specific area of the product from functional perspective.
Yes, functional.
Okay, so why is that? Why they focused on one functional area?
So see, the login logout was on the authentication is an epic which was produced in a sprint planning meeting,
Yeah.
and they have like maybe 10 stories in that.
Now what I mean is, in this case, what I just explained, all teams were capable of doing anything.
Okay.
Okay? Anything. And why? Because they are kind of well educated and they are pretty smart. And it's not that difficult. We think it's difficult, but it's not really. And what happened in reality, of course they don't have all the knowledge, but it's because of a strong collaboration. They just walk to the other team and they say, hey, I haven't worked with this part. Can you please explain me a bit how it works and so on? Can you provide me with information? Because you need to work on this story and I need to have a bit more background information. So that's what usually happens. But eventually, after 4 years, they were capable of doing anything. In the beginning, they were also focused. They were actually component teams. That I'm going to explain after the break much more. But they were in the beginning component teams, and they transformed. But and the second stage was actually not more component teams, but more like something between feature component. So they have this component, which is a map of all the ships, and this map has all kinds of features. You can click on it and all kinds of stuff. And then one team was busy only with the map, and so which is technically a component, but also from a user perspective, also a set of features, a certain area. And so we discovered actually it's not a problem at all to make sure that every team is capable of doing anything. It's a different story when you have that's why I asked 4 teams. If you have like 8 teams or more, then more than 8 teams especially, then you get this problem of not being capable anymore of dealing with those so much information. That's the kind of the place that you hit the wall of capability of knowing so much. Okay. Next one.
So I have a question on release dates. Release date. Usually we prepare a sprint for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So there is one new project. We have moved from traditional development environment to Agile, Scrum. So one client was acting as a product owner. I said that please act as a product owner to explain stories so that we'll put into the backlog and we'll do this. So I have planned 2 to 3 sprints for 2 weeks. Later, a product owner started asking about that. When can I have this feature release date, approximate date? Okay. So still sprint is going on, but there are a lot of new user stories are getting added to the backlog. Yeah. But he wants the approximate date of release. What is happening? I commit with one release date, where the Scrum team needs to work for new features as well as you said, that bug fixes for the existing application which is running in production.
Yeah.
So obviously, every sprint I'm splitting the user stories because of they could not complete few tasks, and it is going to the next sprint. And there might be few more issues in the production environment which is taking. Always the release date I promised, it is going. Yeah. How do we handle it basically?
Okay. So maybe hold it for a second. So I can explain you what happened in this case, and then explain also a bit how you want to approach this in general. They had the same problem in the beginning. So they had this problem of we are planning our sprint, and then we discover that actually our sprint is velocity, and what we defined as this many story points we can deliver was completely messed up. So it's much less. Why? Because there are so many production issues. So the first thing they did is, well, it seems like it's about 40% of our sprint is actually production stuff, and I guess, well, it wasn't that bad actually. It's what one of the teams had this problem. So there were other teams were dealing with features. We had a rotating team. So one of the 4 teams was actually dealing with production. So they were very much heavy on doing most of the time, almost most of the time, actually dealing with the production stuff or operational stuff. And so for them it was very unpredictable what they actually could deliver. So they simply said, we're going to try to deliver something, but we're going to focus very much on production, while the other teams can actually deliver the stuff, not dealing with production. Nevertheless, when the issues came out, like bugs, the team which actually introduced the bug had to solve it also. So still the issues were going back to the teams. And we didn't have, so there was, that's the first step. They actually just recognized we cannot actually deliver that much, so reduce the velocity. They could just put a percentage. And then if you say, for example, but still the release date is sliding, because if you take into account that you have 40% of your sprint or something production stuff, you can actually extrapolate and say release date is going to be then pretty long, but yeah, that's the reality, and we don't want to lie about it. And but if you say then my release date is still actually all the time further and further, that means something is wrong with quality. So there's a fundamental problem with quality, and there didn't that much happen at Story what I explained, but kind of happened at some point that they discovered that they needed to do some really replacement of a component which was stayed there for such a long time. It was really bad, and so they decided to spend 1 or 2 sprints actually to replace this, which kind of pushed the release date really significantly suddenly. But this is a decision that could be made to look at the problem and see if we really take care of this problem, then we're going to go much faster after that. You have to be sure. You have to have the team which actually stands behind this decision. And goes to product owner and asks the product owner, this is what we want. Are you okay with that? And we're going to spend 1 or 2 sprints to clean this S up. And after that, it's going to be better. So they spent 2 sprints actually to clean something up. And after that was much stabler, and they could actually have a much higher velocity. Does it answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike. Yeah.
Hi, I'm working for a product development company. So what they thought is like till last year they have been completely into traditional waterfall model. So they want to do a completely agile mode of delivery, and they start a transformation across the organization. Okay. So it is basically a consumer-based product company actually. Mm-hmm. So they have to support their business by 24/7. So they started the transformation in a big bang approach. Okay. So the hurdle, the constraint what they are facing currently is they couldn't move the component-based team to a future-based teams actually.
They couldn't?
Yeah, because they have to support their own business. On top of that, they have to scale it.
Okay.
Okay. So I just want to know 2 things. One is how to handle this situation where the component-based team has to support their business as well as they have to scale up to agile transformation. And second thing is, what is the best approach? Is that top-down approach is good, or bottom-up approach is good, or big bang approach is good for this agile transformation?
Okay, so what we do in LeSS, and not less huge, when you talk about more than 8 teams, I suspect in your case is not more than 8 teams, or is it? How many teams are there?
Currently we have 21 teams.
How many?
21 across the geographical locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has got spread across between India
okay.
and Estonia and US.
Okay, so when you talk about 28 teams, it's not advisable to jump into cross-functional teams in one big bang.
Okay.
And because you just can't handle it, so many teams, and making sure that's actually going properly. And so you have a more gradual transition. In a LeSS situation, so between 2 and 8 teams, and you definitely want to go in one go. The reason why is because we typically see that you waste a lot of time in going gradually in transition, while you could have actually done in just a matter of a few hours. And but in a LeSS huge, it's a different story. So you have then goes deeper into LeSS. It's you have component teams, and you depending on very much on the context, you gradually have a cross-functional team which actually takes care of certain features, and they actually become capable of actually dealing with all components of all those component teams. And but they need to collaborate with those component teams to make sure that that happens in a proper way. And nevertheless, it's not an easy way to go, because of these dependencies create all kinds of problems. So like, can we go in production? No, we can't, because it depends on the component team, and so on and so on. So, yeah.
So you don't advise big bang approach, like you want to go with...
Not with so many teams, no.
Okay.
No. So, and when we talk about big bang in LeSS, it's about organizational change. It's not a big bang suddenly that you, I don't know, start to do everything all together in one go. No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, it's a continuous improvement, but the organizational change, it's really in one go.
Okay, so though we start the transformation in from less teams to bigger teams actually.
Yeah.
So how to handle the business here, because they have to support their own business.
Yeah.
Without compromising the business, they have to scale up actually.
Okay.
So
that part I don't quite understand what goes wrong if you go to the cross-functional team, feature teams.
yeah,
What's the
because
difference?
they have to support their business.
Okay.
They can't be moved to a feature-based teams actually. So
The component teams.
yes.
Okay.
So that's one constraint they have it.
But what stops you if you move to the feature team to still support the business?
They have to juggle between these two things actually, and becomes a mess. That's what they had a thought actually. If people are going to move as a future-based teams, and also they have to support their business.
Okay.
So they thought that it could be really a mess actually, because they have to juggle between their sprint as well as their business, offline business.
Okay. Okay, then maybe not go too much into detail. And the one thing I can tell you, and I'm not sure if it resolves, is that one thing I've seen in such situation is that people seem to forget the user perspective, the actual customer perspective, which actually doesn't care about components whatsoever. And I'm going to discuss it much more, by the way, after the break. And which implies that we have this perception that when we support the business, that we talk about that the business actually cares about each component and if they're supported, but actually care about the whole service, those components together. So, okay. Yeah, maybe we can talk in a minute.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. How much time? Oh, we're supposed to have a break or not yet? Question. Oh, who was first? Okay, I'll leave it.
I'm just curious about the inter-team collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have Scrum of Scrums going on, or how was? I understand that the teams collaborated themselves, but then when you have so many teams,
Yeah.
In this project specifically, how was it done? Was there a structured process saying we will meet on this day every week? So that a particular designated member, they all meet together, or was there a Scrum of Scrums meeting running along every day? And from a general perspective, what is your recommendation?
Okay. Good question. The break time, when was it? 50 minutes. Good. Okay. Thank you. And very good question. I'm going to explain. The few basic things, and after the break, it's all about LeSS. They're going to explain much more. The Scrum of Scrums. It's a very often used terminology to refer to LeSS actually, which is kind of ironic because that's the least wanted practice we have. It's a part of. It's one of the practices named in the books, but it's actually not very much recommended. It's kind of like, well, if you have to. And Scrum of Scrums means that you get a group of representatives from each of the team, and they get together and talk about stuff, and they can coordinate certain things. And but the single most important thing is really no strict structure, and that you just simply encourage people to talk to each other directly. The second one depends on decisions and things that actually need to be discussed. For example, if you have to make a local decision in a certain components where the multiple teams, two teams depend on each other, have those teams discuss each other with each other directly. So they just have organized themselves a meeting and talk to each other and make a decision. it becomes more complicated when you talk about architectural decisions over all teams. It affects all teams because it's something on a framework level, let's say. Then you have these sessions of 1 hour. There's cross-team design sessions, cross-team design workshops, where the teams are invited. Everybody's invited to come, and they discuss in a certain facilitated way. Scrum Master or anybody can facilitate, but you're not obliged to come. So, but whoever comes is actually becomes capable of making decisions for everybody. So they get together, and they have typically converge on setup where they actually get to all options that can be taken, and they make dot voting, and to choose one. And this discussion takes about 1 hour usually, and they use lots of whiteboards. They can use all kinds of stuff to discuss with each other, and at the end of the session, team is capable of either making a decision and it's done, or not. So if they're not capable of making a decision, there are two reasons. They either don't have information, or there is some problem with the collaboration between people in the teams. So a trust problem or a respect or something like that, or they don't listen with each other properly, so they have this back and forth discussion. I'm right, yeah, you're right, I'm right, you're right, this kind of stuff. And that needs to be resolved, which means proper facilitation from Scrum Master, which makes sure that people are heard and that everybody gets involved and so on. Okay. But typically, mostly when you have a healthy team, if you're not capable of making certain decisions, then in the end you don't have not enough information. So you still have a decision. Decision is we need more information, and this is a particular thing that we need to study further or something like that.
Usually Scrums happens every day also, right? Or in this case, were they meeting once a week or once a sprint, this workshop?
I actually, I've seen teams doing it, a Scrum of Scrums, which is actually representatives from the teams, and doing this once every sprint. But again, it's not the preferable way of doing it, because the existing meetings, I'm going to explain later on, like overall product backlog refinement and a sprint review, where overall sprint review, where all team gets together, and overall retrospective and team retrospective, overall retrospective. It's good enough. And then you have on top overall the design workshops, and where what I just explained, and the people going to each other's stand-ups meetings. So usually stand-up meetings are different times. So typically one team member from one team gonna go and observe the stand-up meeting of another team, and this is good enough. And Scrum of Scrum is actually it proves not to be that much useful. Not much happens there.
Can I ask one more
Yeah.
question? I've worked in very large product teams, or wherein again it was multiple continents, over 200 members, and the objective would be that you would have a major release maybe every couple of months, and we started to observe, even though each team was following agile, quote unquote, wherein they were working in sprints, we started to observe a certain degree of waterfallishness developing within the sprint. Because it's at some point you have to orchestrate component A working with component B. It's not just enough that component A completes their backlog for that sprint, but the end of it, before the final go live, all of the teams have to kind of now put everything together to see how this works. So when I started to narrate this to someone, they were like, wait a second, what is the difference between this and waterfall? Because you seem to be doing a whole lot of development, and then you're sitting about 2 weeks later for this massive coordinated testing.
So they haven't delivered at the end.
Sorry?
So they haven't delivered at the end.
So every team seems to be going in 2 week sprints.
Yeah,
right?
But what do they deliver at the end?
At the end, they deliver a set of maybe features, set of stories. No, not in production. They deliver into production maybe at the end of a month, because you're dealing with more than 10, 15 teams.
Yeah.
So they can't all kind of deliver and put something in production at the end of 2 weeks.
Okay.
So sometimes they would have these, not sometimes, in this particular team, the production cycle was every 2 months. And before that 2-month period, so they would have like 6 weeks of non-stop sprints, right? So they would have 3 sprints in those 6 weeks, and then followed by this massive coordinated testing. All the teams are sitting together and then testing everything out. So then this kind of introduces a certain degree of waterfallishness in the whole process. Even at a sprint level, sometimes there is a certain degree of waterfallishness that develops when you have to coordinate between teams.
Yes.
Is this a challenge that you've observed, and how have teams managed this?
Oh yeah, definitely. And to be honest, it's not even Scrum, because if a team doesn't deliver potentially shippable product increment at the end of the sprint, it's not Scrum. So that's but it's unfortunately way too often the Scrum teams deliver stuff at the end and they say, oh, we're doing Scrum. What's your product? Or we deliver something that still needs to be tested. And no matter how big, less or less huge, they deliver potentially shippable increment at the end. The only discussion becomes what it exactly means. So in some cases, it has to be at least well tested. And well tested means that you have a high degree of resolved dependencies. Once the sprint is done, it's actually dependencies are resolved and it's tested. And so there is a really high degree of this definition of done. And nevertheless, because we have this definition of done is so important, it's such an important tool. It's actually the tool for driving continuous improvement. You continuously push it further and further to make sure you push this constraint and you squeeze it further and further to encourage teams to become creative in resolving those dependencies, to become creative in testing. So what kind of testing do you do? Some tests are useless, what I've seen. That's the single biggest problem I've seen, by the way. Useless tests. The typical test, what they call a chain test. I still haven't figured out what the heck is chain test. Chain test, what they usually say is the chain test is, oh, all those components have to work together. So what we need to do is have a test where you shoot one message in one side and it comes through all the way through and it has touched all the components. So what exactly have you tested? I have no idea. Because you're testing something which probably didn't even change, which is the connections on infrastructure level. So what's the point? And so testing, the way of testing, it can be much, much better and more sensible, more evidence-based, so that you have a proper automation of tests and so on. These kind of things, when you start talking about it, start dealing with it, and creates possibility of actually, no matter how many teams you have, at the end of the sprint, still having potential shippable working increment. So that's the challenge then in your case. What kind of things can you figure out, what kind of practices and things to actually start improving this and reducing this amount of undone work. We call it undone work. So the work that needs to be still done after you said I'm finished. Yeah. Okay. There was somebody else was screaming also. But I guess you.
Yeah, I just have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is, how do you get the product owner more involved, okay, towards the success of the Scrum teams, especially in terms of prioritizing the user stories, then writing fine-grained user stories, and then adding the right amount of details in terms of acceptance criteria, etc. Because many times what I feel is probably the product owner is not so much involved, or probably since he also supports a number of other Scrum teams within the feature area of what he is looking at.
Okay.
Probably the attention and the priorities on these factors or attributes gets reduced over a period of time. Okay. So that is my first question.
Let me answer that one, otherwise I'm going to forget. So you mentioned 2 things, and because in a combination of those 2 things, the first one, how do you get the product owner involved? That's a very common problem, and just look at from that one and the perspective, and then combine it with the second part of your question is the product owner if gets involved if he cares about the product.
So he definitely wants to be involved if he cares about the product. So occasionally people don't care about the product and have this behavior of like, I'm more important, I have better things to do than with this low-level techie guys. This kind of behavior. So that needs to be simply exposed. I literally go to product owner, you really feel that you're more important than they are, and they kind of get embarrassed and everything. So so you want to have a product or not? I guess your common sense says you have to collaborate with those guys. So anyway, so no matter what you think, you have to collaborate with them if you want to have something. If you don't trust them, we have a problem anyway. And but the second part, if you're talking about the multiple teams, and he's definitely committed, but then he doesn't have enough time. Yeah. So there is one widespread misconception of what product owner does. So what's the definition of the product? What does a product owner do actually? He has a vision of the product, he makes priorities, and he deals with the stakeholders. So the question is, how much time does that cost? I suspect, and maybe I'm wrong, is that also he's writing user stories maybe, or writing, defining which features needs to be implemented, right?
Yeah, writing user stories.
Yeah, this is not the product owner's job. Okay, so of course he's okay to do that, but especially in the LeSS situation, he shouldn't be actually dealing with on that level. This should be, the user stories are the product of collaboration between stakeholders and a team, and most of that is actually on that level. Of course, product owner is involved very much, but it's not kind of the single wreckable neckwood where everything comes out or something like that. It's not like that. So it should be actually production of a collaboration between those groups instead of coming from product owner. And product owner, of course, when, before anything happens, he has to actually give approval and say, this is what I find important, this I don't find important, and so on. This reduces the number of amount of time that he spends in doing stuff tremendously. Actually, he doesn't even need to be present in a product backlog refinement. So there's nothing in product backlog. Of course, it's helpful, and he makes decisions and so on. But when in a product backlog refinement, the biggest part is actually understanding each other. And at the end, this is most important. Once you understood each other, deciding what's most important is actually the easy part.
Okay, so you mean to say that writing of the user stories part itself can be taken over by the team just in collaboration with the product owner?
Yes. Actually, the basic Scrum never says that the product owner writes user stories, or writes the product backlog items, by the way. The user story is just the one form of product backlog items. We are ready for the break. Oh yeah, you have one more question. Yeah.
So you were also talking about improving versus running, right? The percentage in your slides for the teams, and you were also talking in terms of the refactorings and other things.
Yes.
One of the challenge which I have faced is after a certain period of time, right? Once the team starts building the features, probably this refactoring aspects, especially the code refactoring or the test refactoring, probably in terms of the delivery or towards the race towards the mid-year release dates, etc. Beyond a point in time, probably the health of the code base starts to deteriorate. Okay, so how do you address that? Is it that you would advise, or based on your experience, that in every sprint you spend some amount of time in terms of refactoring to ensure that your code base is maintainable, or do you have any other ways by which this can be done? Because often what I see is beyond a certain period of time, probably this is not being evidenced as one of the problems in the teams, and probably people really don't acknowledge that the need for that.
Okay, so definitely continuously, actually not even every sprint, actually every piece of code that you touch, the typical the Boy Scout rule. And the Boy Scout rule says whenever you touch a piece of code, everything surrounding the code and the code itself should be left cleaner than when you actually saw. And this is the kind of the ultimate basic level, on TDD of course. And but besides that, we talk about a bit larger things. If you talk about a bit larger things, then yes, every sprint, yeah. So the solution that I explained a bit earlier about the team spending 2 sprints to clean stuff up, and it's just not advisable. but we didn't have a choice. We were just way too late. So this is actually wrong to do it. So please don't do what I did. So it's definitely not advisable to kind of have special time to do this kind of stuff. Don't do it. Just encourage the culture of continuous cleaning. That's the cheapest way. Yeah.
Now it is time for the tea break.
Yeah. Okay. I can imagine that you still have questions regarding the first part, what we just did this morning. If you want to ask questions about that, you can write it over there, or whatever you want if you don't want to walk, and we can get on those questions about at the end. So for now, I would like to actually talk about LeSS itself. So what is it? And before I've already put this slide, if you want to know more about the story that I've just told you, either on the LeSS site, and there is a very extensive version, or on InfoQ itself. So InfoQ version is for us, stay there for quite some time. Okay, LeSS. So if you go to, when you go to a LeSS site, you're going to see this picture. And it has all kinds of icons, all kinds of stuff. And so in the middle, there's this framework thing. And there is this word framework and scaling and framework. And it is about scaling things. And it is, in a sense, a framework. And unfortunately, it gives you very often a wrong idea what LeSS is really all about, large-scale Scrum. And the creators, Craig Larman and Bas Fodder, they named this scaling and framework because it gives people a tool, something to actually work with on a shoe level. Shoe hari, I don't know if you probably heard this terminology. So what LeSS is all about, when you go to organizations, you want to make a true change. A lot of things you're going to find in the books, the first two books, are not on a shoe level, they are on a ha and ri level. So you really kind of pass through the methodology stuff and the practices and this kind of stuff and go to the stuff that really changes the way you actually work together in one organization. Okay? So don't be discouraged by amount of stuff that you see here. This seems like a big framework, but once I explain to you, you're going to see that's actually not big at all. It's actually just Scrum in a very basic form, but used in a way that you can actually use it for many teams. And in many ways, it's actually descaling stuff. It's not scaling. So if I would choose, it's less about scaling or descaling, I would definitely choose for descaling. It's actually descaling your organization as you have right now. Very often we are sitting in a very complex organizations with lots of structures, procedures, and roles and responsibilities and all kinds of this kind of stuff, and the scaling helps you actually to bring it down. Okay? So to continue on that, what's the background of LeSS and what's the driving force behind LeSS? The first thing is this continuation of a thinking, mainly introduced with Agile principles, but applied to organizational level. Okay, so this is the idea, kind of like this Agile thing idea, and but applied on organizational level. The second and the most important is that it's a bunch of thinking and organizational tools. Thinking, it's the way you actually look at things and the way you want to actually be driven by the evidence-based information to bring a true change. And it's organizational tools. It brings you all kinds of tools to make sure that you can actually make this change happen. So how you actually deliver this change. And essentially, LeSS is an organizational design thing. So a LeSS framework is actually design of the organization. So it's your organization. You apply the framework to the organization. No, it's actually the framework to change your organization. Okay, so if somebody thinks to compare LeSS to other frameworks and say, well, which one shall we apply to our situation? It doesn't work like that. You don't apply the framework, you use the framework. That's what LeSS is all about. It doesn't make sense to say,
well, LeSS doesn't fit in our organization. Of course it doesn't fit, otherwise you wouldn't need it. Third one. So when you say organizational change and the thinking tools, and then it sounds very kind of abstract, and although it's very important, actually the essence of it, it's very abstract. You can't really grasp it. You can't really say LeSS. And it's lots of thinking and tools. What I kind of demonstrated in the first part, so with the question that you asked, and I gave you the answers and the story that I explained, this is the manifestation of these tools, of this way of thinking, of the thinking tools. But in order for other organizations like you guys, if you want to actually do something with LeSS, you have to have something more tangible, and which are the practices, rules, and guides. So practices you can see as lots of practices that can or should be can be used, but don't need to be. That's a kind of depending very much on the context. The guides are things that suggestions in when you have certain situation, you can resolve it in such and such a way, and they're kind of similar to patterns, you could say. And the last one are the rules, are the really basic fundamental things that you want to hold on to, and don't want to compromise. And these rules are carefully chosen and quite minimal. And I'm not going to discuss each of the rules. You can find it on the left side. I think I already explained quite a lot of them. Like Thor shall have cross-functionally collocated cross-component teams. And most of the teams should be cross-component. And so there are many of these rules. You should have one product owner and not multiple product owners, because you have one product and this kind of things. So you can all find them on the left side, so I'm not going to go through them. But these rules are chosen carefully to, just like Scrum, to hit the sweet spot between not too much prescription, but enough prescription to make the change, constraints good enough to make a change. So it's the same like the circle that you actually had this morning, that you're supposed to create a circle, and you were messed up, and I gave you constraint. Two. One is shall be one circle, that's the end goal, but the constraint is that you're not allowed to let go of your hand. Okay, and by the and everybody should be involved in this process. So nobody is appointed to do something whatsoever. These are the constraints given, and these encourage the true change. Okay, so if you would say, let's make a circle, but we can let go of our hand, well, that's kind of cheating. So that's what we do way too much in organizations. We're cheating stuff. And you can say, who cares who's cheating? Well, the customer does care if you cheat. Like we're doing Scrum, you're really good. Do you actually deliver every 2 weeks, almost to production? Potentially shippable working increment? No, we don't. So how come you call it Scrum? Do you have self-managing teams who do the design and the architecture themselves? And no, we have architects, they actually everything prescribed, and we just take over and just implement it. How come you call it Scrum? How come you call it Agile? And that's what we mean. Okay? The next one is the chosen, what I just explained. The last one is that the basic organizational block. So from those constraints and everything, and when you talk about organizational design, what does it actually mean? One thing to remember, it means that you have this organization of a design block of organizations, which is a cross-functional, cross-component collocated self-managing team. So this is the basic fundamental thing which actually LeSS explains as the fundamental, what it means to actually have a organization design according to LeSS. Everything kind of circles around those teams. And what you see often in organizations when they talk about what's your organization, they have this tree of how do you call it, the chart of the whole structure of management structure. So only at the bottom, kind of there are people who actually do the job. So but the emphasis is very much put to this pyramid on top. Okay, while what we actually say is a really completely opposite message. At the center, these are the teams, and everything surrounds the teams. and that's how you organize. At the end, why we want to do this? Because you actually bring true business agility. And true business agility is that the business can change their mind every couple of weeks, and not only on a user story level, but actually on a whole portfolio and product level. So from a strategy perspective. So even at the top level, portfolio level, you can change your mind all the time. That's what you want to create. So what Les, for example, says about portfolios, you don't need portfolios. You just need one product backlog. And this one product backlog, if you do it properly, on a proper product level, it's going to replace your portfolio. You don't need portfolios. Portfolio management. Program management, the same story. Project management, the same story. Okay? It's a framework which is built up. So it's a Scrum scaled up. And not tailored, something that you tailor down. What does it mean? It means that when you compare to other ways of how things are dealt with, we have often these big frameworks which explain all kinds of stuff how you should do it, and then they say if you don't need it, you kind of skip it. You don't need to do it. The problem is that in organizations, unfortunately, it never works like that. When you bring such a big framework, what happens is you say, the framework says that you do this in such a way. Oh, that's maybe we shouldn't skip that. Maybe it's useful. Let's do it. And that also. So suddenly there is this urge to actually introduce all the practices that frameworks actually subscribe or give to you. And while what we say in LeSS, we just gonna there is no framework in such a way that explains everything. There are just all kinds of guides and practices. And the framework itself is very simple, and then you still need to figure out how you're going to do all kinds of stuff. Depends very much on the context. Okay? So the thinking tools are a combination of several things. So, for example, let's pick one, lean thinking. So lean thinking is about continuous improvement and respect. So lean thinking, what many people think, it's about waste reduction and this kind of stuff. It's not. It's about continuous improvement and respect for people. And this is very much embraced and in part of the LeSS. Customer-centric, what I explained earlier also, the developers talk to the customer and they understand really what the customer wants, and you reason everything from the customer. Whole product focus. At the end of the sprint, you have to have potential shippable product increment. What does it exactly mean? It's you use definition of done to push this further and further. So definition of done is one powerful tool to actually help you actually improve this and go further. Queuing theory, an interesting revelation. When you there are probably people who likes Kanban, by the way. Kanban. Quite a few people. Good. I like it too. Unfortunately, in my experience, when I go to organizations and ask, what do you do? We do agile stuff. What kind of stuff? They say, we do Kanban. Okay. Sounds very cool, advanced, because Kanban is actually more difficult to do properly than Scrum. You don't know actually exactly what to do. It's up to you to figure out. And so Scrum gives you quite a lot of constraints. So if you just follow those constraints, you kind of know what you're going in a good direction. Kanban is much more difficult. So I look and ask, what do you actually do? Well, we have these columns and things that product goes, the request comes from one column to another, and we have about 7, 8 of those columns. And we have post-its and put it all together. It looks very nice post-its. So what's your work in progress limit? And usually they don't have it, which basically says you don't have Kanban. Okay. That happens way too often, and they call it Kanban. So that's obviously not good. You have to have work in progress limit. And the second one comes, so what is your lead time? So the lead time is actually still, in their case, 8 months. Okay? So they're doing this agile stuff with a lead time of 8 months. And they say, well, if we keep doing Kanban, we're going to improve, and eventually it's going to be better and better. Okay, so how long is going to take before you drop for 8 months to, let's say, 2 weeks, or maybe a few hours? We don't know. We have actually no idea. Actually, it doesn't really improve that much. And it takes years before you move any further. And if you look at the story, what I just explained, in Scrum, it's much more likely, actually, that it encourages you to make changes in a short time. So you have to realize that the Kanban is much more difficult to apply it effectively than Scrum, in my experience. Okay? The last and the most interesting thing is those columns that you have in Kanban, they represent actually the queues that you have. So you're working with the work in progress limits for each of the queues, and then you try to reduce. Good. Have you ever looked at those queues actually? Is this actually good or bad? The queues are bad. You shouldn't have queues. So the basic theory, queuing theory from Toyota itself says you have queues to get rid of them. So you shouldn't have queues, because it speeds things up if you don't have it. So you should have less of those columns and try to get stuff done and not follow them in a step-by-step way. Okay? So going deeper, LeSS says you have one product owner, you have one product backlog for the whole product, and you have multiple cross-functional, preferably a majority of cross-component teams. So not always is possible to have all teams be cross-component, but you want them to be cross-component. What it means that each team is actually dealing with any technical component they have in a system. You have one dedicated Scrum Master for 1 or 2 teams, and so they can one Scrum Master actually can take care of the multiple teams, and which explains also the role of the Scrum Master, which is much more a change agent than somebody who actually organizes meetings and that kind of stuff. That should be actually up to the team to do it. So everybody in the team should take this responsibility. There is one sprint backlog per team. So once the team picks up certain item, the most important one, of course, they create their own sprint backlog. Okay, so this is how it works. So those teams work together, and in parallel they deliver after they have synchronized the sprint, which there is just one sprint, and all the teams actually deliver within that sprint. At the end of the sprint, there is one sprint review, and where the product is presented, and each team presents their own features, and in a different ways can be done, and together it's actually one product that's presented. Okay. So you have, so this is basically the LeSS framework itself. And just to emphasize once more, LeSS is much more about actually what I've explained about this lean or system thinking, overthinking tools and organizational design than a framework. But nevertheless, this is the framework which helps you actually to start off, to have good enough meetings to actually start being effective as fast as possible. Okay. So sprint planning is you have a sprint planning 1, which has representatives. In a story that I've explained, we didn't do it. We actually, yeah, with this one we did exactly like this. And so you have representatives. And in our case, actually, everybody came, not only representatives for the sprint planning. So everybody came to the room, and the stories are put on a wall. And the people can look at the stories, the team members, and they could say, like anybody can suggest, well, this team is going to pick up this story, and other team is going to pick up other stories. So you discuss this, and it takes about 15 minutes, and you're done with the sprint planning 1. And okay, so sprint planning 2, each of the teams then split up and talk about how actually. So you in sprint planning 1, you discovered what needs to be delivered. It's basically Scrum, nothing special about it. And then 2 is actually how you're going to actually deliver. And in some cases, you might have a multi-team sprint planning 2 where 2 teams get together and talk about dependencies, typically technical dependencies. So if we do this, this team does this first, and then the second team can do that first, and so on. And And after that, they split up and they can deliver stuff. Role for Scrum Master? Yes. In which way? In this context, you mean? This one? Yes, Scrum Master is...
so what exactly is the role for Scrum Master? It's going to be the same as Scrum?
Yes, yes. Yeah. So there is actually no difference there. And yeah, it's just that's just variation of kind of the behavior, typical behavior of Scrum Master in time is also important. It's something overlooked. So in the beginning, when you have a Scrum Master or one team, it typically spends a lot of time to facilitate the sessions and make sure that Scrum is followed properly, that stuff. But the Scrum Master should be as fast as possible getting done with these things because the team has learned, and then he can take care of that themselves. And then he moves much more to actually help the organization move forward. So dealing with larger impediments, like is the product properly defined? And what about all those people, managers getting imposing them all kinds of stuff on teams, which shouldn't be this kind of stuff. So the Scrum Master should be dealing with these issues instead of actually kind of like operational stuff in the team, because that's actually not really essence what the Scrum Master is all about.
Do they all check in the same code line, or they have different branches to check in?
No branches. No branching. So even in so definitely don't want to do branching, because think about it. If you do branching, how are you going to actually make sure that you at the end have one potentially shippable product? So the best one, it's actually a really good constraint tool. So you say no branching, and so it forces actually people to check in right away and discover right away that something is wrong. So you just need to check in a GitHub or whatever. Oh, why do I have this problem? Oh, because this guy has actually checked in something. Maybe I should go to the guy and talk to him and we resolve the problem. To others, what?
You said you have 3 different teams working in the same branch, right?
Yes.
Same code.
Yes.
If my checking creates the code of other
Yes.
teams, so how that coordination happens to fix the issue? Because it affects everyone. As a whole, I cannot get the build done because it's broken.
Yes. So when would you like to know that your build is broken? Right now or at the end of the sprint? So it's actually good. I mean, it's going to break anyway. So when you you change something, you do check in or you do a build, and you do your automated testing, and the testing is really good, obviously, and and you're working on a certain feature. And that feature happens to use some common component, and you change that common component also, and somebody else also change it, and it breaks. Good. You want to go right away, talk to each other, and resolve it. This problem, from my experience, in reality, if you have proper automated testing, it's not a problem at all. It's actually a very good signal to talk to each other, and it doesn't happen that often. Why? Because the teams work on different features. And they have certain common set of code, but code tends to be also itself separated based on a certain domain areas, and which implies the features. Yeah, now it's working. Yeah.
Okay. So the part 1, we have only the team representatives. So in the part 2, who are the participants? Is that only the team, or do we get product owner participate in the part 2?
No, usually part 2 in the Scrum also, the product owner usually doesn't participate. Can participate, but it's absolutely not necessary, because you talk about how. And so each of those in part 2 is that each team separately usually does their stuff. So they have these stories, and they have discussed a bit dependencies, and they discovered there are not much dependencies or no dependencies. Good, then we can do then we can deliver this feature, and now they discuss with each other how we're going to deliver it. So in other words, define tasks and so on.
But the what should be told to the members in the team, right? So it's only the team representative who knows it. So how do they sync up? If it's a back-to-back meeting.
Yeah, in a part one, just like in a normal Scrum, you discuss what you're going to deliver, and is there any dependency on what level. So which features are we going to deliver? What these features mean actually, of maybe some details. But usually, actually, it's this part one takes 15 minutes. So it's not much discussed. It's just kind of like, hey, our team wants to actually pick up this task. Is that okay with you guys? Yeah, I think so. Or maybe not such a good idea because we have this dependency, maybe do it the other way around or this kind of stuff. So this information is already present in the teams. So there is nothing, in that sense, newly discovered. And if there is just this dependency or few dependencies in the 50 minutes, which a representative brings back and says, well, we discussed and a team is going to pick up this one. And personally, this is what the suggestion is from LeSS. It's a suggestion to have team representatives. Personally, myself, I prefer to have a whole team present, but I can imagine that works if you have 4 teams, in my experience. But okay. If you have more than 4 teams, it becomes difficult.
Okay. So the biggest challenge is, we don't get to know the dependencies much before to make sure that the 2 teams have to work together many times.
You don't?
We don't get to know the dependencies between teams much earlier, so as to make this decision that these 2 teams have to work together in a planning meeting.
Oh, you do actually, because before this is, of course, product backlog refinement. And there are 2 product backlog refinements. I haven't put that picture, sorry for that. And which is, they have the overall product backlog refinement with representatives. Or maybe I have, I'll see you later. And then where these dependencies are also discussed. And then we have a team product backlog refinement where they discuss further, and they might discover all kinds of dependencies and stuff which needs to be resolved.
Thank you.
Okay. Sprint planning. So sprint review, yeah.
Sorry, just the previous slide.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand here is when compared to a normal sprint planning which happens within a Scrum team, correct?
Yeah.
So there in the sprint planning too, you say it is multi-team sprint planning too, correct?
Yes.
So which means that the product owner is still only one product owner who's serving across these multiple teams, or how is it?
Yes, product owner serves multiple teams, yes. And he doesn't participate, usually doesn't participate sprint planning too.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's not needed.
Okay.
In normal Scrum also.
Okay, so he is somebody like an area product owner kind of a thing, like for a particular area, feature area, he is a product owner, and then there are a number of Scrum teams where the sprint planning too happens. Okay. Does that mean, is that the meaning of multi-team sprint planning too?
No, multi-team sprint planning too, it's only something that occasionally it's needed because there is a dependency between specific teams. So multi-team sprint planning too, it doesn't involve all teams. It's just sometimes needed if there is a dependency. But normally, almost always, each team has its own sprint planning too. There is not collaborate with multiple teams.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So then there is no difference in terms of the sprint planning 1 and 2 when compared to normal, how it happens at a Scrum team level when compared to the LeSS, correct?
Yeah.
Is there no difference or?
No, not really, no. It's just a few minor additions and a handful, handy stuff to actually make things work with the multiple teams. It's simple as that. But the 90% of what I'm explaining here is really basic Scrum. It's just for multiple teams.
Okay.
Microphone. I'm going to bring the microphone.
I just want to clarify a point that you made. Yeah. So you said there is sprint planning 1. Prior to the representative, joining that sprint planning 1 meeting,
yeah.
Is it that the team collectively meets and then they internally decide on a commitment, and then that commitment is carried forward by the team representative in part 1? Is that the understanding? Because typically in Scrum, it's the team that together they decide what they will want to pick up for the next sprint. It's the team that decides to stick estimates for each story based on their velocity. So is it that there is such a thing as sprint planning 0, wherein each of the team members go through the backlog, they decide what they want to pick, and then one team member says, okay, I'm going to the sprint planning 1 meeting, I will carry forward what we discussed. Is that the understanding?
No, the estimation typically happens in product backlog refinement, like in Scrum, and you usually do maybe just a bit of an adjustment of the estimation in sprint planning, but you do actual estimation in a product backlog refinement. Why? Because otherwise the product owner cannot make decisions about priority. He needs the estimation to actually compare the cost with the value that he creates. So estimation is already actually be done in a product backlog refinement, which is before this. So not sprint planning 0, but there is product backlog refinement, where each team separately does the product backlog and the estimation, but they also have a kind of a rough thing in an overall estimation sometimes. So overall product backlog refinement also has representatives, and they do kind of a rough thing. We think this is a big or this is small and this kind of stuff, but the real estimation is done still by the teams, like in Scrum. There's nothing different about that.
And so if you have 8 teams, this kind of refinement, the product owner obviously has to be there for that conversation to happen, right?
No. Doesn't. Why? I mean, he needs at the end to make a decision about priority, but clarification is done between the team and the stakeholders. So you want to have actually preferably some stakeholders like domain experts or users or customer and all kinds of people who actually want this stuff, and you clarify with each other, and in that sense you can then say, oh, this story should be split up and in this way, and this is the estimate, and this is a product owner doesn't need to be there. Often it is, but it doesn't need to be there. Yes. Yes, sure. So I'm not saying they shouldn't be there. I'm just saying it's not a requirement that he has to be there. It's a requirement for make a prioritization at the end. So what exactly are we going to deliver? What's the most important thing? Which is basically when you have overall product backlog refinement and where the product owner is present and where he says at the end, okay, this is the prioritization, but even if he's not present there, he could say after the overall product backlog refinement, for the next sprints that we're going to do, this is my priority. You have discovered all the information, and this is the priority that we're going to make. Yes, each sprint. Sprint planning part 1 is each sprint. It's again just like Scrum. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
When it's coming to less, what you are saying in the part 1, you will be taking all the groomed stories with multiple teams to the part 1, and then bringing the prioritized, like with cross-functional teams or whatever it might be, and then bringing the priorities to sprint planning 2 here. So out of that only we are bringing this sprint backlog. That's what I see from the diagram.
Yes.
So you are bringing the prioritized backlog to the team, and then making the sprint backlog again. So when we will divide this into tasks?
No. It's the sprint planning part 1. It's about actually defining your iteration, the sprint backlog. And that you say, this is actually the focus for this sprint. The product owner comes there, and or maybe it's already obvious in a product backlog, and because it's already prioritized, of course. and the most important items are put on a wall, and the representatives come to the wall. You can do it differently. This is the way I've done it. But they come to the wall, and they look at those stories, and together, representatives of the whole teams, and they say, well, I think we can pick up these items. We're going to do we can focus on these items. So our commitment for the next sprint is, or forecast, whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of discussion about those words. And so we think we can deliver these. And so one team or representative picks up those items and brings it to the sprint planning tool, and then they make the tasks. Okay. Outcome of the sprint? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Should work. Just need to press button or something all the time. No. Again. And just should. Why does it? Okay.
Yeah, I think I would like to get further clarification on the product owner and stakeholder part. Okay. Because my understanding generally was that product owner represents, you might have n number of stakeholders. It might not be one person who's a stakeholder behind a product. Yes. So it's the product owner's responsibility to get this whole thing, define the vision, and then sit for the clarifications what the team asks. I mean, if there are any kind of. So how is it possible to get stakeholders for every such sprint planning? Point one. Point two, if it's an open market, off-the-shelf product, wherein I have, I need, I've got some input for some of my marketing guys, and it has come from multiple customers who are across the globe. Yes. And they cannot be there in this sprint planning. It has to be the product owner who does it. So,
okay. I understand your question, but you put it in either or way. So you either have a product owner or you have all those stakeholders.
If one person defines the vision and other person, other set of people, clarify the question.
Okay. Okay. So the role of product owner is to have the vision and explain this vision. So we always make sure that the vision is actually well understood by everybody. And he makes priorities. Okay. So we split things apart and look at separately. The problem is, what I see often is that we put these two things together. One thing is that you have the vision and have the priorities. Another thing is that you understand each other and talk to each other about all the details about how do we going to deliver it. What does it mean? What kind of features do we need to deliver? How these features do look like, and so on and so on. So these things are totally separate. Scrum by default says that a team talks to the stakeholders. So that's simply two separate things. So the product owner doesn't need to be present when you discuss the features and what kind of things need to be delivered, but he is always present, and he always makes sure that he makes eventually the priority. He makes sure that things are done in a certain priority, that his vision is actually kept. So, and the most important, he can say no. So stakeholders discuss with the team, and a team always makes sure that when you discuss with each other, they don't make promises. They just simply go back to product owner, say this is what we discussed, and the product owner can say, no, I don't want it. So that's the way of working. And then we have what you put as a kind of a false dichotomy of having on one hand either all the stakeholders or a product owner. Usually, and I think you just mentioned yourself, is that you have a number of people surrounding the product owner with all kinds of expertise, which actually translating this need from the actual customer, who is the client, who's completely outside the company. And these are the stakeholders you probably talk to as a developer, because you can't talk to all the time to the outside client, of course. So in your situation, the stakeholders, what you talk to, are these marketing people, whatever you want. So that's the collaboration you want to encourage and have. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the collocation has, there are two things in not collocation, as you might say. So one is distributed teams, another one is the dispersed teams. And one is much, much worse than the other. And dispersed team is simply really has a tremendous effect on the cost that you have. I just, in a break, I had a conversation with one of you is about dispersed teams. And they have a dispersed team, which part of the team is one location and a part of the team is another location. And they have introduced all kinds of measures of communication to improve actually collaboration between those people. Great. But at the end of the day, you have to do a measurement and you have to be honest with yourself. Am I ever going to be as effective as a collocated team? Probably not. It's just much more convenient, much better, much easier, and so on and so on. And so you have to at least realize this. And this is what the system thing is all about. And that you realize that an experience learns that dispersed teams are simply wasting money by being dispersed. It's actually much more money, if you look at carefully, than any flight ticket that you have or staying for a number of months and so on. Distributed teams is a different story. Distributed teams means that one whole team is one location, another whole team is another location, and you're both building one product. Okay. So you prefer also in distributed teams to actually have them collocated, all those teams, because it's much better. But if you don't, then it's not a disaster. I mean, it's workable. It's just slightly less effective because you have to communicate, like I just explained. And so what you do in such situation, you emphasize very much on the communication tools. It's very practical. How do we talk to each other? And I think one story from India was, what I heard is that they had this Skype conversation, but the connection was not so good. So they had this only voice conversation. So you have a meeting together with each other over Skype, but you don't see each other, you just hear each other. So, and it didn't work well. And they didn't do video because of that connection. And so it didn't go well because they couldn't see each other. So there was all kinds of confusion. So who's exactly talking on the other side? I'm not sure. And the sound also be different, and you have an accent problem and so on. It just didn't work. So what they introduced as a solution was actually to put to print the face of each person on either side and to put it on a cardboard. And whenever somebody starts talking, they pull up that on the other side, and this is the person who actually talks on the other side. And this helped. And this helps in a collaborating manner. Okay. And so these are two things. And when you talk about huge, less huge, so you have more than 8 teams, you prefer actually to collocate one area. So I'm going to show you a bit. When you talk about less huge, you actually separate in the groups of teams. Each group is an area. And the reason for area is, the area means actually that a certain set of features which belong to each other, or a certain part of domain which belong to each other is one area, and you want to actually have it on one location. And each of these areas have an area product owner. And but somebody asked, I think, so how many product owners do you have, and so on? You have in it less from 2 to 8 teams, but also in less huge, you always have one product owner who is actually product owner has a vision and makes priorities. Okay, so and in only when you go to more teams, you want to have people who help you out as a product owner. But they help you out. They actually focus on a more detailed level in each of the areas. But at the end of the day, there is still one single product owner who decides. Okay. Let me move a bit further, and then we can get to more questions, depending on how much time we have. So you have a sprint review, and which is all together. And then you have retrospective, which is separately. Each team has their own retrospective, just like the normal one. And afterwards, they usually have, actually, from my experience, this overall retrospective. It's very useful because teams come back and they come together in a room like this, and they explain to each other what kind of conclusions they have or things they want to share with other teams.
and they might discuss, kind of like an open space way or something, so typically in a circle, and they express certain ideas and certain improvements, and they ask what others think, and if everybody agrees, that's the action for the next time. So this is the engine for continuous improvement, and where all teams are involved. So overall retrospective is actually well, in my case, in my story, actually all teams were involved because there were 4 teams. But if you have more teams, you can imagine that you could have a retrospective which actually doesn't involve every team member, but involves representatives, Scrum Master, PO, and these people are get together for the overall retrospective and need to deal with the certain problems that teams have raised. Okay? Yes, product backlog refinement. Explained a lot. So overall product backlog refinement and team representatives. And I've done actually with all teams all together. And to be honest, it was challenging. And so afterwards, I wouldn't advise to do that. So all teams all together, even if you have just 4 teams and they all put together, because it's damn difficult to discuss things. And there are always people in the back who are actually not involved. And people either talk, take way too much time, or people are just kind of disconnected. So neither of those is really good. So we were struggling with this. Nevertheless, we kept doing it, and in this case, we did some kind of a gut feeling estimation. So it's not really this estimation where you discuss a lot of things, but you simply do a gut feeling, kind of like, oh, I think this is 13, and you use the planning poker card to do that. Okay. But the real product backlog refinement happens actually within each team separately. Once after the product backlog refinement, they say, well, this team is most likely going to pick up these items. So you go and do product backlog refinement with with the stakeholders which are involved in this case. Okay. So it says about shortish. It's not really long. Shouldn't be. Okay. Then we get to actually one of the most trickiest thing about and the most difficult to kind of to really compile is the component teams versus the feature teams. So the difference between component team and a feature team is huge. It's actually, if you don't move to feature team, you stay in component team, forget about the potentially shippable product increment, forget about delivering every sprint and this kind of stuff. It just doesn't work. And also from the lean thinking perspective, there are all kinds of things we overlook when you have component team. What is a component team? It means that one team deals with the one backend system, another team deals with another backend system even further from the user, and there is a third team which deals actually with the user interface, and so on and so on. This is component teams. Feature teams means that one team deals with all those components all together. Why it's bad? It's bad because it creates dependencies which you don't want. So feature teams tend to have much less dependencies. And then this resolves all kinds of problems and makes Scrum possible on this level. Okay? So even worse thing that actually is often overlooked is the single most important thing about doing Scrum and Agile Kanban and Agile things in general is that you always do the most important first. Okay? So what happens if you have component teams? You have one team who's actually working on a first most important thing, and a second team cannot actually work because he has a dependency of another team, but he can work on an item on a 10th on a list. So they're going to focus on that. Or they're already done with a component for the first 3 items, so they're going to work on an item on number 10. Okay? And so you get all kinds of dependencies and a waiting time. So we are done. We are finished with our component. There is no potential shippable product, but we are actually done. So we can move on and utilize our capacity. So for one sprint, we're going to work on an item, on a number 10 item, but we still haven't finished what we're supposed to finish. This is just completely against the lean thinking and what we're actually trying to achieve, so that you get things done instead of utilize your capacity. If you change to there is also a tendency to actually pick up stuff which you're actually familiar with, not the most important things. And when you change
the third one problem is that in component teams screams for a project manager. So if you have component teams, there is these dependencies and has to be resolved, discussed, and so on. So there is always this need. We have to have somebody who coordinates this stuff. Because if we don't have, how do we make sure that we have something which is working? And so this creates the need for having a project manager or whatever you want to call it, architect, and so on and so on. Or usually a bunch of these people if you talk about the large products with lots of people. If you go to feature teams, I'll move to this one later. If you go to feature teams, then you have one team which is actually capable of doing all that stuff. There is a much less dependency, and the problems are simply disappear because the problems are created because we had component teams. Okay, so this is the basic then a picture how that looks like. You have that you always focus on the most important, and they pick up always the most important one. Yeah, this is this explains how it affects your delivery time. So when we talk about agile stuff, and often we say in large settings, in large organizations, you cannot expect to deliver after every sprint potentially shippable product increment. Well, it's because you have component teams, and the component teams require all kinds of stuff to and additional inefficiencies, like all kinds of people who are actually preparing stuff and coordinating stuff in order to actually be able to deliver something at the end. And then even at the end, you can't deliver it because you have the testers who actually need to combine and integrate stuff and deliver it. Yeah?
Hello?
Yeah. It's it should be button down there. Oh, it's a different one. Oh.
Hello?
Yeah, it's working.
So, have you faced situations where it's a feature queue?
Yeah.
Basically, at least we had a problem where we had the UI, the business logic guys, and the testing team also to be part of one Scrum team.
Yeah.
But the business logic guys, say the backend guys, would come and tell us that that itself takes 2 weeks time. Their part itself takes 2 weeks time. Whereas our whole sprint duration was 2 weeks time.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you don't have anything potentially shippable, but there's something done.
Yeah.
So have you faced situations of this kind? And when we ask them, are you able to break it further?
Yeah.
The last that we put through.
Oh yes, definitely, and that's actually one of the could be put as one of the problems that you have they really treat themselves the backend team as a kind of a complete different project even. So they even in some cases they even have a project leader who when you request something they make a plan. Oh, we're going to spend this much of time and it's going to take so you have to wait and so on and so on. So you can, for example. Our approach is actually, instead of actually talking about this kind of collaboration between teams and trying to optimize it, which never optimizes, by the way, it gets slightly better, but that's it. So it's just not, I don't see the possible actually to have component teams and to deliver it in one sprint, just doesn't match. Yeah. But they depend on a component team. Ah.
We had a team of 6 people.
Yeah.
Okay, if we had a team of say 6 or 8 people, 3 people were guys who are developing the backend.
Yes.
People were expertise in the UI,
yeah.
and then 2 Scrum testers. So this was the team. But what would potentially happen is the estimates that come out from for a given user story from the backend guy alone would be 2 weeks.
They shouldn't do that.
So
how come the two team members or one team give estimates?
The team when they estimated the story points or in terms of task hours when they did the sprint planning, their work alone, the backend work alone will go to 2 weeks, which means you will not have anything which is fully working as a given feature itself.
Okay. So I suspect the problem is then more architectural or something, or this kind of efficiency in how they deal with architecture, design, this kind of stuff. So they possibly have a really complex architecture or something. And so it sounds like that I've come across that problem at least, that cause that
in a time they have built this complex thing, and so they are used to actually, no matter how small the feature what's being asked need to be delivered, they have this tremendous time that need to be done in this backend system. So it's a good thing that you have them in one team. I would suggest to actually give them a challenge and say, guys, why don't you spend a retrospective or something or a workshop to discuss with each other what is possible to reduce this time, what should be done. Don't come back with it's impossible, because everything is possible. Just assume that anything is possible and come back with a resolution. Typically happens is they say we need to do some serious refactoring and we need to simplify stuff, because it doesn't make sense that we have this huge separation in components or something. Okay? All around.
It's continuation with her question actually.
Okay.
So I have a realistic problem where I got a huge calculator with a list of lot of Excel formulas. So as you said that it took around, it will take more than 2 weeks to write, maybe technically it's a service methods or whatever backend stuff.
Yeah.
And on top of that, business logic, it would take maybe for a developer, maybe take 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and your user interface team, again 1 more week. In this scenario, so we have done retrospective and we have drilled down to number of tasks, and we have tried our level best to reduce the time basically. So, but we could not do that. In this case, can we extend our sprint plan from 2 weeks to 4 weeks to make a shippable product at the end of the sprint?
Okay, good question. So what you say, we know we actually have a complex architecture and stuff, and they should be reduced, but it takes a lot of time. And but the situation is as it is. So we just can't deliver this fast. And which means that you what usually happens is that you have this undone department or undone people who do undone work, and so you recognize this as a point. So you also label this work as undone work. So you still have a sprint of 2 to 4 weeks, and then you make a definition of done. In the beginning is not very ambitious, and then you say after this definition of done, we still have some work that needs to be done. And it's very often some other people are actually doing. They're not part of the feature teams. And you have a not component team, but an undone work team, as you might say. And like a testing, like this kind of stuff. And but you definitely want to label as such. And so you can actually in the long run keep improving towards actually getting rid of that undone work. And by labeling it, and having definition of done, which is gradually becoming larger and larger, you're having an engine for the continuous improvement to actually get it actually to that position. I would definitely not change your sprint, and I wouldn't make a sprint of 5 weeks or something, or 6 weeks. It doesn't make this creates a false sense of success. I would rather have every sprint which